Hey there. So you just went under contract, right? And now it comes time to do inspections. You're not sure what kind of inspections you should get, or more importantly, how much you as a buyer should be budgeting and setting aside for inspections. And are those costs that you have to pay out of pocket at the time of inspection, or can you wait until closing and roll them into your closing costs and then pay everything at one time? So that's what I'm going to be answering for you, since I'm at a home inspection right now myself. So that's a common question and a discussion that I typically have with buyers. A lot of the times, actually, most inspections that are done, the standard buyer will probably end up paying somewhere between $1,500 and $1,800 on inspections that generally right out the gate they're going to get no matter what. So what kind of inspections are those? Typically, definitely a home inspection, number one. You always want to make sure that you have one, even if for some reason the property that you go under contract on has already had a home inspection performed. That was not an independent home inspection done for you that you were able to be present for and ask questions about, because I will tell you 100% of the time, the language that is used on site by a home inspector is always going to be different than the language that's used in the report, obviously for liability reasons. So that's your number one home inspection. Also the appraisal, especially obviously if you're paying in cash, that does not really necessarily apply to you. You can always have an appraisal done if you'd like, but it's not a requirement. If you're using any kind of financing, you're gonna have to get an appraisal done. Normally your lender is probably gonna have you pay for it up front at the time they order the appraisal. Occasionally it will be rolled into your closing costs and you'll pay later down the line, but that's not typically the case. The other thing that most people get, whether they actually need it or not, is a termite or wood destroying insect report, I should call it. I normally just often call it like a termite inspection, but they do check for more than termites. They also check for like wood borers or even powder post beetles, carpenter ants, anything that's going to actually eat wood. So that's something that most people get regardless of if they need it or not. Another one is probably going to be HVAC inspection. And then lastly, I would also say there are times where specifically it's going to depend on the property and the house. If you are walking through the house and you feel like the floors are super uneven, then obviously there's a structural inspection in your future, just for general precaution. And same thing with HVAC. If you go and it's probably super old, then I would actually recommend that you get a HVAC inspection done. That is going to help you actually diagnose the problem and see what the capacity is like as far as its efficiency as of right now and what the lifespan on it may be. Because a lot of the times when the home inspector goes out, they're looking at it, but they don't actually run a full diagnostic and they don't check for the efficiency because they don't actually take the panels off and run all the tests. So that's definitely something that you could look into getting just to make sure, but a lot of this is going to depend on your risk comfortability as far as your assessment level goes. If you're fine with just the bare bones and you just want to be directed by the home inspector as to whether or not you should get more inspections, then that's totally up to you. But if you'd rather be safe than sorry and you value peace of mind, you have the money to front any inspections that you want, then you should probably definitely go for it. Radon is one that generally most buyers, at least that I work with, don't necessarily test for, but it is something that's good to look into, because although it's not super common, it's still relevant for where we live here on the East Coast. There absolutely have been cases where the level of radon found inside of a home is more than it should be. So just keep those things in mind. Obviously the costs depend and they vary depending on who you contact, but one of the things that you can do is when you actually schedule these inspections, you can ask the inspector themselves whether they would allow you to pay at closing or not. you have to understand some inspectors have been burnt in the past by allowing that to happen when they said they were going to pay at closing. Well, the buyer pulls out, never actually makes it to closing because they terminated the contract, and now the inspector has to run them down. Sometimes they stop communicating whatsoever if they don't live here and they're out of state. How do you actually recoup your funds for the time that you spent actually investigating that property for them before they took ownership? Well, that's really difficult. So please do understand, it's not them giving you a hard time if they want you to pay out of pocket. It's just a personal choice that they've made because of things that may have happened in the past. So yeah, if you have any other questions, just let me know, of course. And yeah, thanks for watching.